Welcome. You've found the Raisin Heifers, the podcast where women of all ages, stages, and levels of chaos come to graze. Please welcome your hosts, Ashley and Lisa.
Hey, Heifers, how's it going today? I'm asking that question solo because Ashley had a little bit of trouble in her barn. And so I'm by myself. And the funny thing is today we're going to talk about parenting, and coincidentally, she has a toddler and she's having a hard time getting him down for a nap. So you know what? Sometimes life happens, right? And it's interesting when we're thinking about parenting, there are all those different stages. And boy, I remember how hard those toddler and baby days were. It's funny because you'll hear people say, oh my gosh, treasure these days, cherish these days. These days will never come back again. And that's true. They're precious days and those are precious times. And sometimes I look back and I really miss those times. But then there's times like this where I remember, yeah, those were hard days too. I was tired. I don't know, some of you listening might have kids. Some of you watching or listening might have kids or might not have kids, but I had 3 and I had them pretty much like stair steps. So the first 2 were 28 months apart and then 36 months apart, 34 months apart. So really had like little stair steps. So when I had a 5-year-old, I had babies, so I had like a 5, a 3, and a baby. And that was really, really tough. And I remember trying to coordinate naps and get everybody corralled and out the door. And I used to say, I need a Sherpa to get out the door because I cannot believe the amount of stuff you have to tote around when you have a baby or a toddler. It's wild. And then somehow your brain forgets that. And you're like, oh, you just romanticize those days. They were so wonderful. These wonderful days with my littles at home. And then it all comes back, right? Because then I had a grandbaby, and I had a grandbaby who I was very, very fortunate to watch for a lot of years. She and I spent a lot of wonderful days together. It was almost 4 years that, I watched her. So it wasn't expensive for daycare for my son. And so she was with family. And of course, that's the ideal situation. I was fortunate enough that my parents also watched my children while I worked and while my husband and I worked. And that's a gift if you have that. And if you have that, make sure you're thankful for that gift because boy, I can't believe, number one, the cost of daycare is wild and prohibitive because, my kids have had to have, because we live kind of all over the country. I wish I could help them all. I can't, because we're living in different places. And I cannot believe the money y'all are spending. This is wild. I always say I'm in the wrong business. Anyway, I digress. Going back to having littles, then when I had my grandbaby, I remembered once again, I've got the bag, I've got the stroller, I've got the juice, I've got the snacks, I've got the diapers, I've got the wipes. Just getting out the door, I feel like you get out the door and you get in the car and you kind of go, oh, and it's a relief just to get from the front door to the car, wherever you're going. So parents of young children, I feel you. Enjoy these days, but know that you're not alone and know that it is absolutely exhausting. Well, the last time Ashley and I talked, we were talking about funny things that happen with our kids, like eating. She told me a story, and I'm going to retell it since she's not here. She's so funny. She took this cruise. You've heard us talk about her cruise. So she took a cruise. She ended up at the last minute having to take her little one on this cruise, which was not anticipated and kind of a surprise, but she managed to manage it. But he wasn't really thrilled about, I guess, the food on the cruise. So there was a lot of chocolate milk and French fries happening. Well, he got so used to, on that week cruise, he got so used to chocolate milk that that's all he wanted when they came back was chocolate milk. And so she said, we're weaning off the chocolate milk every day. I guess the chocolate milk got lighter and lighter and lighter because she was making it with like the organic Hershey's syrup. As moms, we have to feel better about ourselves. So at least it's organic, right? So, like that thing on Facebook, how do you like your coffee? And it's like from a 1 to an 8, with like 8 being the darkest and 1 being the lightest. Yeah, I think he's about at a 3 now. I'm not sure because she just keeps making the milk lighter and lighter. And I told her when my middle son was little, we went for 2 weeks. All he wanted was chocolate milk and tater tots. And I thought CPS was going to come take me away because this kid wouldn't eat anything else. And I was beside myself. And I thought, oh my gosh, well, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to get him to eat? And this is, I think, one of the biggest parenting struggles. We want them to eat healthy. We want them to have their vegetables, their fruits. We don't want to give them junk food. But sometimes toddlers are going to toddle and they're going to eat what they want to eat. And I'm telling you, he went for 2 weeks and I thought, we're never going to break this diet. Well, we finally broke the tater tots and chocolate milk. And I'm happy to report that he just turned 37. He's a very healthy man. So know this as well. They're going to survive. Kids are very resilient. So don't worry about it if they're picky eaters. If you've got a great eater, God bless you. I don't want to hear about it because good for you. Most of us did not have great eaters. My grandbabies run the gamut. Some of them are great eaters, will eat anything because I've got 5 grandbabies. So some of them will eat anything and some of them don't want anything and are very particular, even down to like what kind of chicken nugget they want because it can't look a certain way. So, it's funny. It's a challenge. And again, heart goes out to you parents. So, I mean, those are the kind of the lighter sides of parenting, but there are things that weigh heavy on you. Do you want your kids? How do you want them involved? Do you want them too involved? Do you want them to really pursue something? You see these parents who really push their kids. And I think it's such a difficult, fine line that we walk, right? Because we want our kids to be successful. Everybody wants their kids to be successful. And the goal, I think, for most parents, I know my goal was for my children to be more successful than I was. I want them to have more opportunities, be more successful, be able to, live up to their potential in life, right? And sometimes we think we can choose that for them, but we can't, right? So you see these parents, I was thinking about parents in sports the other day because, my kids weren't really sporty spice kids. As a lot of you know from the previous episodes, and those of you who know me know I was a musician. And so we were very much more of a kind of a theater, music, English history type of family. We're not a math and science family, really. We're more like English history, musical theater, music. That's what we're interested in. And not really sporty family. We like to swim. We love to be outdoors and stuff, but not organized sports. Although I'm obsessed with baseball, but that's for another show. Anyway, so we have had our kids in Little League and we've had our grandbabies in Little League. And man, some of these parents are committed. And, I've met parents who have their kids like in travel ball and man, more power to you. It's a lot of money. It's just like with competition dance, competition cheer, competition baseball. That's a lot of money to invest. And it's interesting because you think, would it be good for a college scholarship? Maybe. Are you going to get them, to a different level? Maybe, but that's a very, very competitive thing. And, I was talking to a friend the other day and telling her we knew a family that their kid, they bought another house. They sold their house, bought another house so there would be room for their kid to practice baseball in the backyard. I mean, spent a lot of money on travel balls, spent a lot of money on coaches. And this kid got to high school and went, I don't like playing baseball. I don't want to play baseball anymore. And, I think they thought he was going to be like the next Sammy Sosa. And that's not what happened. And I think we need to be careful as parents that our dreams don't become their dreams. And the opposite too, right? Because my husband and I are both professional musicians for a lot of years, 17 years, right? And I didn't want my kids to live that life. So I purposely kind of wanted to steer them away from it. And maybe, I don't know, I often look back and think, did I do the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? I think we're all just doing our best as parents. We try to do the best we can. And so I wonder, should I have encouraged them more musically than I did? Oh, look, all my kids are musical. They all play instruments. They all read music. That was going to happen no matter what. But I think because of the way I was parented, I didn't want to put that pressure on them. And honestly, the way my husband was parented too. I mean, we both had, I'm just going to say, I don't mean to sound any kind of bad way, but we both had natural talent, right? And my mom realized that at a very young age. She started me playing the piano. I was barely 4. No teacher would take me because they wouldn't take you unless you could actually read, and so I wasn't quite at that point yet. And so she started teaching me piano and then finally got a teacher to take me when I was 5. Well, by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, I'm practicing 2 hours, 3 hours a day. Imagine your 7-year-old sitting at a piano for a couple hours a day. It was rough. I will say she cultivated a talent that took me a long way, brought me a lot of places, met a lot of very interesting, famous people because of it, had a nice, long career at the early in my life because my mom cultivated that talent. So it's a balancing act, right? I'm thankful. And I lost my childhood because all I did was play the piano. I mean, it was constant. I lived, ate, and breathed that. And that's the same with people. Competitive baseball, competitive dance. You're living, eating, breathing, sleeping it. My husband, the same thing. He was a percussionist and a drummer, always made to do that. We started working. We were earning money as musicians long before we were out of high school, both playing professionally before we were out of high school. And that's a crazy thing, but it was just we were so driven. I don't think we were driven. I think we were driven by our parents, and that made music a job for me, right? So it wasn't, people say, oh, don't you love to just sit down and play? No, I don't love to sit down and play. I don't want to sit down and play. That's my job. That's not my pleasure, And so it's interesting because when people see me playing the piano, they think that I'm having a wonderful time because look, it's an act and I'm good at it, right? And so you wonder about your kids. You don't want to push them into something like that. I've had some very interesting discussions with my now grown middle son, who is quite a talented artist. And we've talked about, would he want to do that for a living? Because he definitely has that ability that he could do it for a living. And we've also talked about how doing something that you love for a living can ruin it because it doesn't become a love anymore. It becomes a job. I had a friend who was a musician who said, when it gets to feeling like you're putting car doors on Chevys, you need to stop because it just feels like rote, right, factory work. It's not a love anymore. And that's an interesting thing. So as parents, we have to be careful that our dreams aren't pushed on our kids. And also, whatever our expectations are, it's funny, we expect our kids to become something, do something, be something. Really would have loved at least one of my kids to go to law school. They're all great at arguing with me, so why not? But would have loved for the one of them to go to law school, but none of them were interested in that. I see the potential in them. They don't have any interest. And so at some point as a parent, you just have to back off. And as my Auntie Irene used to say, I just keep my mouth shut. I don't say anything. And I think that's probably a good thing. So we have all these stages, right? We've got the toddler stage and the baby stage where you're just out of breath and harried and hurried and rushing, and it just feels like it's never going to end. And then we kind of get into that elementary school stage and you're starting to think ahead, like, what are their interests? Do we start cultivating these interests? And they get into junior high and high school and you're thinking about, now what do we do? Do we prepare them for college? Is college right for everybody? I'm happy that people are asking that question now, because it was just an expectation for my kids. That was the mindset that everybody goes to college, and I think that maybe everybody doesn't need to go to college. I think that a vocation, a technical school are wonderful things. And I think that they have been neglected for too long. And it's a shame, because we now have people who aren't good in the trades anymore because, everybody had to go to college. And now look what's happening. I mean, my gosh, you go on LinkedIn or you go on Reddit and you see that people with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees are not faring so well. And maybe it would have been better to be an electrician, a plumber, an AC guy, an auto mechanic. And so there are definitely considerations as we try to set our children up for success. And then they reach adulthood. And that's a whole different phase of parenting, right? Because now you have adult kids. Sometimes they're making choices that you're not thrilled about, but you do have to let them make their own choices and try not to interfere and just try to keep a good relationship with them. You see so much strife in families where parents might not agree with, they don't like who you marry, or they don't like the career you chose, or, it's a tough thing. My husband and I experienced that. We eloped wild. This year we're married in November. This year will be 42 years. So that was a pretty successful elopement. I was an only child. My parents weren't thrilled that I was eloping, but they came around really quick, right? Because they just wanted me to be happy. His parents were also not thrilled. They did not come around really quick and made life really, really difficult. And so that's interesting, right? There's two parenting models. There's, we look at my parents and they said, we love you and we're going to love whoever you love, right? And then we look at my husband, who said to his parents, I love her. And if you don't love her, you don't love me. And they just couldn't get over it. And so that has affected, you lose a relationship, not just with your child, but with your grandchildren, and now with great-grandchildren. And so it's a cautionary tale, right? I don't mean to go too dark in this, but it's part of parenting. And that is a cautionary tale. Because if you decide that you're being right over loving your child, ends up alienating not just your kid, but your grandkids, your great-grandkids, that's a horrible place to be. Because as a parent, our job is just to love them, and let them. It's Mel Robbins, right? I love Mel Robbins, as an aside. if y'all haven't listened to Mel Robbins, my gosh, first of all, where have you been? Because she's ubiquitous. She's every place. But I love Mel Robbins, and her let them theory to me is in one way so simple and in another way so empowering, because let them decide what they want to do. Let them. And what's your job? Your job is to let them and to love them. And then the other thing is, it's not just, well, let them do that, because it's not that kind of flippant, whatever, let them. It's not that attitude. It's let them. And then let me still be true to who I am and love them. And sadly, sometimes that means loving them from afar. And sometimes it means doing what's best for yourself too. It's all a balance, guys. It's just a balance. And so I think with every generation, let's hope we get better at parenting. I think we're definitely more open now with our kids. We're more open to talking about things. I have the most wonderful discussions. I have one child who calls me every morning, and we talk every day for an hour, sometimes more. And he is we will send each other things that we want to discuss. Like, we don't run out of things to discuss. And what I love is we can disagree and we can argue about stuff. And I'm talking about like deep philosophical stuff. We talk about religion. We talk about politics. We have differing views on a lot of things. But at the end of the day, we love each other so much that we can say anything and be okay. And that's where you want to get to with your kids. You want to be able to say anything and know it's still going to be okay. And by anything, I don't mean like hurtful things, but you're allowed to have different opinions. You know what I mean? You don't always have to think your kids are right. Your kids don't always have to think you're right. You're different people and you have different philosophies, and it can't just be my way or the highway or their way or the highway. Everybody's allowed to have an opinion, but at the end of the day, you're still family and you still love each other. And, my thing is always #love, always love, right? Love, love, love. I'm always all about the love, because boy, does love cover a multitude of wrongs, right? If you just love people and love them well, oh my gosh, that's going to solve a lot of problems right there. So here's what I have to say. As you're parenting, give yourself grace, give yourself time to breathe. Sometimes just maybe parents of little ones, just take a breath. Just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, until you calm yourself down, because it'll pass. It's all going to be okay. It's only milk that's spilt on the floor. I always say, if I spill something, no, it's only water. It's only milk. Nothing is irreparable, or I should say those little things aren't irreparable. Those are things that you can get over. So let the minor things be the minor things and try to be positive. Lord, get your kids outside. Get them away from those screens. I mean, that's the only thing I'm going to preach on. Come at me if you want to. Send me mail. I don't care. But your kids need to go outside. They need to get their faces out of those screens. It is destroying us. I mean, I don't even want my face in a screen. So, and here's my face in a screen. Imagine that. But my gosh, get them outside. It's just horrible. Before I go, I know this has kind of been rambly, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about parenting, and that was kind of our topic for today. And I hope I've covered all the generations and the ups and the downs and some of the heavy and some of the lighter. But before I go, I want to say a couple nice things have happened this week. First of all, those of you who have reached out to me about the podcast, Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. We're still kind of, like I said, it's still a work in progress. We're still learning. We're still getting it together. Eternally grateful to my producer and my sweet husband, Pat. There he is. There's producer Pat. Say hi, producer Pat.
Hello, heifers.
What do you have to say, my bull, about parenting?
Well, since I listen on the side.
Oh, he's choked up. Well, you choked up. That's okay. Now I'm going to get choked up. Why are you choked up today, my baby?
I like what you said. Just love them.
Yeah, just got to love them. Yep. That's all we got to do.
Sometimes that's difficult.
Oh.
But, in the end, you just got to love them.
Oh my gosh, that is funny. That's true. Sometimes it is rough, right? Look, I make it sound like it's easy. Just love them. Oh Lord, sometimes the struggle is real. They do things and you're like, what are you doing?
What the F?
What the F, effing heifers? What are you doing? But in the end, you just got to love them. Oh, there's some wisdom from, we got him in the fields today. We got him in the fields, heifers. We got our bull in the fields. There we go. Well, I'm going to keep him on here until I sign off. But before we sign off, I want to say I've gotten some really nice messages from you guys, some nice love, and honestly got a lovely card in the mail from a couple of my favorite heifers, honestly, in Vegas. My Vegas heifers. So got a card in the mail. And yes, my heifer, I was talking about you in the corporate video and how you were done wrong by a certain retail giant who we won't mention, but that starts with May and ends with C's. Anyway, they did her dirty. That's if you want to go watch the episode on work and working in the corporate world, that's in that episode. They are awful. Anyway, I got the nicest card. It was so encouraging. So you guys, while you're watching, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're listening on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, wherever you're finding us, I would love to hear more from you. Please join our private Facebook page. Send me a request. Happy to have you with us, and looking forward to the next time we talk. And we'll see here. We're just sending Ashley our best, and this stage of parenting life is not an easy one. And I want to tell you, she's a trooper. I know a lot of you are busy. I can't even tell you how many balls in the air that girl has, how much she juggles, and how much I love her. So flying solo today, except for with my, bull in the pen over here. So hope everybody has a good week. We'll see you again next week. We'll see what happens. It's always chaos in the barn, so we'll see what happens next week. But for then, guess what it's time for? It's time to move on. Bye, heifers.